All right, team. Welcome to the Boulder Athlete Podcast. I'm Josh, and I'm hanging out with Andie Scelsi today. Andie, thank you a ton for making time to hang out. I'm especially grateful that you called me out on Circle and said, we need some more Boulder women on here. And you're so right. I so agree. So thank you for being bold enough to say that and then making time to, join.
You're so welcome. It's completely an honor to be here for sure.
Sweet. Well, it's an honor to have you say that. Andie, you have a really unique story. So, like I do with many of these, I reach out and share some things. Like, what might we want to talk about? And just give me a sense of who you are. And you provided a bunch of really great detail, which I totally appreciate. And it just gave me such a snapshot of like, wow, you have a very unique background. You have a very unique story. And the fact that you are here right now, I think makes the story all that much cooler. And so let me just do a very high level recap for those that are watching and listening. These are some things that stood out. I'm not going to go in great detail because I want you to provide the color here, but the things that stood out were one, in high school, you were the top 25 in the world in the mile time. You were a competitive swimmer.
Yeah.
You went to college on a full ride scholarship to swim. I'm sure there's a whole bunch to get into there. After college, you found addiction with alcohol and drugs, which led to homelessness for a time. I want to hear about that. You got married. You had 3 kids. You discovered some health issues. You got divorced. You found fitness again. You found coaching. You went back into the swimming world and had some great success as a master. You found CrossFit. You found Boulder. And I think through all of that, I'm sure you found just this incredible perspective on life. And I would love to hear what some of that is. So I hope I haven't given away the plot too much here, but man, that's an interesting journey. So take it away. Let's hear about your background some more.
Oh gosh. Okay. I don't even know where to start. You did such a good recap of that. Uh,
Well, in high school, you're a competitive sport. We'll start there.
yeah. So I started out with a pretty rough childhood, I guess. I was very angry. It wasn't the most stable of homes. There were some addiction issues in my home. And I just knew at an early age, like I found swimming and it was an outlet and I clung to it for dear life. And it
Mm.
was just my outlet for everything. I could tell you at 10 years old, I was getting a full ride scholarship and I was getting out of, I was getting out of Dodge. And it just
Yeah.
fueled me in this bizarre way that other people didn't have. And I ended up being successful just because I could just grind like nobody else could grind. And distance swimming, especially back then, it came down to if you could grind or not. It wasn't as much technique and technical stuff like we have today. And so that did get me out of my house and I went to Villanova University and it kind of went downhill from there. And I kind of got
Starting
into
in
some
college, after
starting in
college.
college. Looking back, I could see the beginnings of alcoholism at 14. And to get into that, I have no problem ever sharing my complete 100% raw story of that because of the fact that there's people struggling with it
Yeah.
without telling anybody. And there's family members struggling with people they care about and love that are in addiction and they have no hope. And I love being able to say, hey, look, this is where I was at and now this is who I am today and there is hope. So I try to stay very, very open about that, even though it's kind of some people frown upon talking about it openly. But yeah, once I got to college, I don't know what happened. I guess I had hit my goal. I'd done some things, very successful things in the swimming world and I got my goal to get out of my home and some other traumatic things happened like my freshman year my house burned down and my animals died and I just
Mm.
I just kind of like hit my emotional limit I guess and I had some shoulder issues from grinding too much in the pool and I didn't have that outlet anymore and so it just kind of went downhill quick to the point where my senior year, I couldn't even make my Big East cuts, like to go to conference. And I'm still on
Mm.
the drug test list for USADA. They're coming to drug test me. And I'm like, I can't even make conference. There's no need to drug test, but you're on that list until you fully retire. So I started struggling with drinking in college and it just escalated super quickly. As
Yeah.
soon as I graduated, I ended up staying, I had a fifth year because I had shoulder surgery. So I had a fifth year. I did make it through college. I graduated. And then, probably within like months of graduating, I had fallen in love with the punk rock scene in Philly. And I
But
just,
I didn't get you fell in love with what?
The punk rock scene, like punk rock
Pu
music,
cool.
like
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
mohawks and, I was angry and like I hated the suburbs. You people don't get me. And I started
Mm,
listening, to a lot of more punk rock music and I started going to these shows in downtown Philly. And I guess I was searching for a new identity. And that was the biggest thing for me is my whole identity
mm,
was built on being a swimmer. That's all I had. I had nothing else. And so when
yeah,
I couldn't swim anymore, I'm this angry, raging, hate myself person. I have no place to put it. I did think of like maybe trying other sports. I was like, oh, I want to box, and I went to go try it, and they're like, oh, your wrists are, because I was a swimmer, I just had a different build. They're like, you won't be able to box. You're gonna break yourself. And I was just like, okay, well, screw it. I got nothing else. So I had a lot of depression issues. I had a lot of eating disorders. I had self-harm stuff going on. And I just, as I fell into this punk rock scene, the drinking and the partying was very glorified. And you're almost, the harder you were, the cooler you were. And whatever
yeah.
I do, for some reason, I have to take it all the way. So, I mean, very quickly, I ended up losing my job. So I was like, well, I'm going to go with these punk rock kids and go hop trains and live on the street. And that's what I did. I ended up living on the streets and going in squats and hopping freight trains and kind of adopting myself into this weird, they call it gutter punk kind of lifestyle for I don't know, maybe like a couple years off and on.
Do you
I mean eating out of trash cans, the whole thing.
that is that's crazy, and I have no experience with that, so apologize in advance if, like, my questions are totally ignorant.
Oh, no, it's fine.
I'm curious if, like, because I'm intersecting a couple things that you shared. One is, like, the search for identity, which is a powerful force, incredibly powerful. I have gone through seasons of life where I'm like, "What is it? And where do I find it?" And probably less on the extreme side than some others, but it was still powerful for me, so I can only imagine just how much of a driver that can be in seasons of life. So, that with finding homelessness, is that something that, like, you were forced into because you didn't have a choice? Was it more that, or was it like, "Is this a place I can reestablish myself and even find some identity in this new, like, culture?" Is
Mhm.
that a thing? Like, I'm
Mhm.
curious how you would respond to that.
No, I think it was just a culmination of me not being in my right mind physically because of it started off as just alcohol. I
Mhm,
think my mind just being so distorted for how much I was drinking and thinking that that was an okay idea. And it was almost like I didn't feel accepted. I didn't feel like I fit in anywhere without being a swimmer. So it was like, well, this is going to be the new place where I fit in. I had to define myself as something. I don't know why that thing is in me. I'm not real close to my family, anything like that. And that's what I had. And I clung to it even though I knew it was very and I also wanted to do something that was destructive to me. That was just I was okay
mhm.
with butting heads with death. Like that's just the mental place I was at.
Yeah, I don't personally relate to that, but I have people that I think experience that are very close to me in my life where they were in a search for identity for sure. And not that like drugs was their identity, but it was something that they became known enough for that they were like, well, this person, it was the thing they were good at.
Mhm.
For lack of a better way of saying it, was the thing that they were, like, kind of infamous for. That's a bit of a stretch,
Mhm.
but, like and then as you start to see people reacting to you in some kind of a way, maybe that's a little bit positive, like, "Oh, this person is the one that I go to for this. This is a person that I confide in about these things. This is the person who does it well in that culture," whatever. It was like a wind behind their sails is what it looked like, and it just progressed them deeper down this path. And so, yeah, as the way that you're describing it makes me think like, gosh, that sounds so similar to the way that I've seen it experienced by others, in my life. And I'm curious when in college, I mean, you're on a D1 scholarship, you're a competitive swimmer. I'm sure you're kicking
Mhm.
ass and you come in with these expectations and the coaches are supporting you and you've got people that are in your corner and behind you. And yet you're battling this. How aware were they that this was something you were fighting? And were they interjecting in a way that was like trying to get you on a straight path? Like, what did that look
Mhm.
like at that period?
So it's really easy to disguise alcoholism in college. I think it was brushed off as I was just partying too much. The one thing that was, I think, disturbing, and I did have coaches try to help me with, was my eating disorders, which I tried to hide from everybody. But I mean, visibly, I mean, my sophomore year, I had lost, I mean, I don't know, like I had gained a lot of weight my freshman year. And I literally remember looking in the mirror and being like, okay, if it's eating disorder that gets rid of this weight, we're going to get it eating. I mean, I was just so crazy in my head. And I did,
Mm.
I mean, I violently restricted my calories in a crazy kind of way. And then I was both bulimic too. And it was just horrible. And I do remember my coach tried to, like, because it's very touchy for a coach to touch any of those subjects. They can't tell you about your weight. And but I remember him trying to kind of hint to me that, we're running on absolutely nothing, and it did affect my performance. The drinking, I mean, maybe I usually tried to keep it outside of important swimming windows up until the end when my swimming was just garbage anyway. But I think for the most part, to answer your question, I tried to hide it a lot. And I don't think they really knew me on a personal level enough to really try to interject. At the end, like right at the end of college, I mean, I had a couple friends that knew how much was going on and did try to like intervene and help, but I wasn't down with that. I wanted to do what I wanted to do.
You mentioned you were trying to, like, displace the drinking around these swimming windows. To me, what that says is you still had enough drive and motivation to be a competitive swimmer at that time to prioritize performance to some degree, right? At least in certain windows, maybe not all up. At what point do you think that the priorities shifted where you had enough of a prioritization of your performance that you were still working your other habits around it versus when the other habits just started to take over and performance took a back seat? When did that happen?
Yeah, it's funny you ask because I've shared this like at AA meetings. This is when I knew I thought I could control my drinking, but the point I knew I was completely out of control and it was like, okay, this is not good. Is when we had like conference coming up and I would write these, like, I'd even write it in posters on my wall. Okay, no drinking until whatever, February 29th. And I couldn't do it. I would drink again that night. And I'd be like, okay, it's only, now it's only, a week and a half. Don't drink for. And I remember just being like, crap, like I physically, I can't, to the point where it is now ruining what I have loved and my passion has been with all of my
Yeah.
heart since I was 7 years old. I mean, just I had it had taken over. That was at some point in college. I remember that, and I was like, oh, this is not good.
Folks that are listening or watching this has got to be resonating with them as well. Like I don't think I've ever been addicted. I don't think. But as I truly and very honestly evaluate my behaviors, there are some addictive patterns in there. I'm thinking through this now as you're saying it because I do go through those moments as well. Totally different spectrum. Like it's on a different spectrum, less extreme, but like for those that are dealing with this stuff currently, for those that have family members that are dealing with this stuff, like I'm thinking about the signs and signals that they can be kind of watching for and observing
Mhm.
and how here's a good question or maybe it's not a good question but here's a question for you. How could have someone approached you or could someone have approached you at that time in your life with some silver bullet magical solution? Is there anything that someone could have done that you felt like could have got you on a better path?
I've thought about that, and that topic's kind of come up before, and I really don't think so. I think my path had to just run its path, and this is kind of what we
Mhm.
talk about in meetings too. And when I see people going through it too, it's people have to hit their bottoms when they're going to hit their bottoms. And I remember them having like an alcoholic come talk to us as they do in college, and I remember actually even thinking like, yeah, I might be an alcoholic, and like it didn't phase me. When we learn about addiction, it's not just the physical addiction, it's like the thinking and the feeling and the way that we see things behind that. So I had just like a horrible way of thinking that, my life was the worst and I needed to torture myself and everything was about me. And for me to be able to get out of addiction, just I had to change all these thought patterns. It wasn't just getting the alcohol and drugs away, it was changing how I think. And for me to have stopped myself earlier, it would have had to have changed that. And I just think I had to go through what I had to go through to be broken enough and to feel enough pain and to really want to try anything, as far as, okay, I'll start, letting it's stuff I didn't want to believe. I didn't want to think that I was weak and I was, I just had to feel that amount of pain and suffering to be able to change my ways. I just don't think there's like we have like blinders on. It's very, very hard to affect somebody when they're not ready to be affected yet, if that makes sense.
That makes total sense, and that's really well said, actually, very concisely said. It's very difficult to affect somebody that's not ready to be affected, and that's so right. I could take this in a few different directions. I'm gonna ask a similar question, slightly different way. If you were to go back and interact with your younger self, how do you think you would approach your younger self? Would you
Mhm.
know, like, just go by side and just knowing you kinda had to go through the process and hit rock bottom and just be there? Is there something you would have tried? I'm curious. That's an interesting thought.
So it's interesting because I have a 12-year-old daughter who's very much my mini. So I almost feel like I'm in this role where I can kind of help her change her patterns so that she doesn't group up like me. I'll even tell her like, because I am not the greatest mom. I am not. I am a lot like my mom. And I try to, fix that. I mean, I'm not, I don't have the things that she manifested that I bring into being a mom, but I can be harsh. My go-to is not, okay, let's hug it out. Like I have to work on that. So I walk her through and I'm very open about my childhood too. And I will tell her, like I shoved everything inside and told myself I had to get tough and mean to get through it. You don't have to do that. We can talk, we can go take a walk. The heart, and we have like a cue word. I tell her when you need a hug sometimes, and it'll shut me up too. She'll say, I just need a hug. And then we'll just hug. And that
Mm.
stuff, maybe if I would have gotten stuff like that, it would have been different. It is weird. It's almost like trying to go back and change myself. So it's kind of weird that you bring that up. That's the only thing I can think of is maybe if environmental things would have been different. And I will never blame my mom or my upbringing or anything. She did the very best she could do with what she had. It was how I processed it and worked through it. It took me what it took. And my brothers didn't process things the same way. My brother grew up thinking everything was fine and was never mad at her. And that's what's so interesting to me is how we see
Mm.
things and view things
Yeah.
the exact same memory, different as somebody else. So it's kind of just, I mean, my go-tos are let's just see the best, let's give people the benefit of the doubt. That's what I try to go to today rather than judging and getting angry and my feelings hurt and things like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it can take a lifetime to get to that place and have
100%.
perspective and be able to carry that consistently. The reason I asked you that question in that way is because I have a 13-year-old daughter, and we're going
Hmm.
through the things. So this is incredibly topical for me. And I'm like, my wife and I this morning sat down and had a conversation about some stuff. And man, I don't have answers. I have questions and I have concerns and I have ideas, but I don't have answers. And so, now we're not going, nobody, they're not going through the same things necessarily, but there's some signals, that raise some flags for sure. And so to have you go back and you're now raising your daughter, to have you go back and teach yourself, like I'm selfishly like, what are the tips? Like, what would you do? How would you approach this? I'll take whatever I can get here. Yeah, that's really vulnerable. Thank you for sharing that. And the other part of me is also seeing you just so confidently talk about this. And that is really cool. And that testament to the journey that you've been on and the strength that you found through it. And that's not easy. That's not handed to you. You earn that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
kudos to you. I also want to hear more about this. And so now we're kind of at this stage. We circle back to the trajectory of your story. You're out of college, addiction. We were talking a little bit like the homelessness culture. Pick up from there. What drew you out of that? What happened next?
Well, I'll tell you the funny story of how I had my first kiddo. He's 16, almost 17 now. My mom was going to help me get into rehab was the plan. So I had somebody got me a plane ticket out of Philadelphia. It was not going well there. I was actually, I mean, I think I was saying, calling people and telling them goodbye. And I think that's why my mom got me a ticket home. She was going to try to get me rehab. I completely lost my mind.
Mm,
And she was trying to help in her own way. Of course, she didn't get me into rehab, and I ended up I was going through the most horrible detox of my life. Like I thought I was going to die. And I kind of weaned myself off a little bit. I got well enough and I had gone, a couple of days without drinking that much. And I was like, oh, I could go down to the bar. So I ended up meeting who was my father's biological dad in the bar, and he's like, well, I'm in Fort Lauderdale basically, and he's like, well, I'm going back to Tennessee tomorrow, and I'm like, I'll go with you. And he's like, what? I was like, yeah, I'll go with you. I had nothing on but my Doc Marten boots, my little dress, and $5 in my pocket, and that was it. So I went up to Tennessee. I didn't know where we were going. I didn't know where we were staying, and I ended up getting pregnant with Brogan, my first kiddo. And he gave me hope for the first time. I still was very messed up. I was still a very sick person, but I had something to like, okay, I kind of want to live now, if that makes sense. So I ended up having him,
yeah.
and he was kind of the beginning of my reason to try to get clean and sober. It took me a couple years. It wasn't until I don't know if he was 2 or 3 until I finally got sober. I had to go to a couple rehabs and healing homes and things like that. But it finally stuck. And then very probably too soon after that, I ended up getting married and very quickly again having my daughter Jay. And then after that, I had my son Kanan, and I was just doing the stay-at-home mom thing because I thought that's what I was supposed to do. And I don't want to say I hated it, but like I was going, like I'm a doer, like I have to be doing something. So I tried to be the very best stay-at-home mom. I had everything on Pinterest perfect, but something inside of me was just missing. And I remember sitting on the couch. I don't know if I was breastfeeding or if I just had a kid stuck on my chest. And it was a Spartan race came up on TV. And I'm watching and
Mm.
I'm like, something inside of me like lights up. I'm like, I bet I could do that. And I was like, I want to be an athlete again. It was just this huge, like, I have to be an athlete again. And from there, we didn't have a lot of money or a lot of time. And I had these 3 little kids at that point. Husband was working a lot, was never home. So I was just like, started with the jogging stroller and doing squats. I have the funniest pictures of my like scrawny body doing squats in the park, with the kids. And I was just trying to do what I could on my own. And then I was like, well, I really want to do an obstacle race and I want to train and get good for it. So somebody's like, you should try this gym. And at the same time, I was getting divorced and really trying to find myself, and which ended up being for the good. It was really rough and traumatic at the time, but ended up being for good, and it's all on good terms now. But it gave me an opportunity to really start seeking who I was. So I was like, well, I'm just going to go to this gym on Wednesdays when they have an obstacle course class. And I mean, there was barbells, and I had no idea what was going on, but I was like just in love. Like I'm like, I have to come here every single day and learn every single thing they're doing. And it's like a hybrid gym, it's not a CrossFit gym, but some of the similar movements. And I saw these girls that were strong and big and like just doing this cool stuff. And I was like, I need this. Like it was almost like how I always pick a new identity. It was like, this is who I'm going to be now. And so I
That's
stayed in
right.
there and I worked my butt off. I ended up going back into teaching, um, and then coaching and swimming, and now I'm in love with CrossFit.
What I'm hearing is like the motive, things are flipping. Priorities have obviously shifted in your life. You've now got 3 kids, which are obviously the priority.
Hmm.
And now that's helped you find some stability and some
Hmm.
focus and drive. And then that has led you back to discovering fitness again. At what point did you get back into competitive swimming? Because I think that was also part of your like re-entry
Hmm.
back into competition. Where did that come in?
Yeah, very much. So it's right after the divorce, the coach in the area, like we have one big swim team, and he had asked me, the head coach of that swim team, Coast Aquatics, had asked me if I wanted to start coaching. And so I had started coaching, and that kind of, they had a master's team as well. And I was like, oh, well, since I'm coaching, I might as well swim because it really helps you like be a better coach. And I was like, well, I'll just get in and, kind of see what I could do. And after just a couple practices, like every practice, I would get so much better. And I was like, I think I can swim again. And then I was looking up every swim meet I could go to and see how fast I could go. And so it was COVID year, but I was like, well, they have a Masters Nationals in the spring and a Masters Nationals in the summer. I was like, well, I'm going to go to Masters Nationals in the spring. It was about a year away. It'd give me a year to train. So I was in the pool and using the gym just to kind of learn all the things in the gym and get strong. And I went to Masters Nationals that first spring and I entered, you can only enter 6 events. I entered 6 events and I won every single one. And what was
Whoa.
mind blowing to
Oh, wow.
me is I couldn't, when I was a swimmer, like you did one thing, like I was a distance freestyler. That's all you did was miles and miles and miles. But I was like, oh, I can do
Mhm,
breaststroke. I can do IM. Like I could do all these things I was never really like I wouldn't say not allowed to do, but I just wasn't trained to do. And so and
mhm.
sprint, like do shorter things. And I've learned as a master's athlete how to teach my fast twitch to come back because I'm naturally slow twitch, but from so much slow twitch training, my fast twitch and any I had had disappeared. So I got to learn all this new stuff that my body could do. And it was so fun. Like I loved competing again.
No,
It was
awesome.
and it was just a different satisfaction. Like before when I was younger, it was just my job. I had to. There was
Yeah,
always
you
this
did it
next
'cause you had
goal.
to.
And this was just more like I could enjoy it a little bit more. And like every little thing, like the butterflies behind the block. And like I enjoy every little thing about it. And like I remembered how much I truly loved competing.
Lots of things are going well at this point, and you're discovering probably finding a very different kind of love with swimming as you just described than you'd had previously. At one point, early in your career, you loved it because you're really good at it. And so that's all the reason you need at that point, young and,
Hmm.
driven by ego and competition and, hey, I'm winning and this is great. But also because you felt like it was your ticket, to get
Hmm.
out of a set of
Yep.
circumstances that you were in. And then to rediscover it later in life under very different circumstances. There's no need to compete. There's now just love for it and desire to do it. That's really, really cool. How does that translate then into finding other forms of fitness? You find CrossFit
Hmm.
at some point,
Hmm.
and,
Hmm.
CrossFit wasn't your ticket anywhere. And so that was a
Hmm.
totally your call to get into it. How did that come
Hmm.
to be?
I joke that like CrossFit is probably the like hardest thing for my body type, my skills. Like I picked the thing that I'm probably like the worst at to try to get good at. But like I said, I was in my gym militia and I had been exposed to some people training for CrossFit. So I'd seen some of the movements. I started kind of watching it on YouTube and I was just completely fascinated. We get a little exposed to it, but primarily I was just using the gym to get good at swim. But I started having this idea planted in the back of my head. I wonder what I could do if I really trained just gym. So I got to the point where, I did a few seasons of swim and I did some cool stuff and I loved it, but I couldn't get much better at it, at my age. I mean, there's some things I could do, but with the CrossFit and things in the gym, like I can find a brand new skill. I can, and it's this whole new, I got that moment, which is like being a little kid
Yeah.
again. And I just fall, I love it. And I'm a very stubborn to a fault person. So I'm like, I can't get something. I'm like, I have to keep working at it till I get it. So
Yep.
I did my first CrossFit competition when I was not training any kind of CrossFit with a girl from my gym that also trained no kind of CrossFit. And we just kind of, did a scale to see what we could do. And I was so humbled. I was like, I thought I was fit. I thought I was such a good athlete. And
Yeah.
I mean, just crushed. And so I tried to integrate it a little bit more on my own from there on. And then it was about a little over a year ago, I did a competition where I tried to start doing some Metcons by myself just a little bit before that and started getting a little bit better. And we did pretty good at one of these local comps. So I had tried another programming and I was like, well, I'm gonna do, I'm gonna really like do CrossFit programming. So I started with EMOM company and my gymnastics is my woo, like not my jam. I wasn't getting any better at gymnastics. I hurt my knee. I was like, there's gotta be a better way. And I was at home, I'm really nerdy. Like I'll watch just like YouTube's of video, like YouTube CrossFit events to try to like just
Mhm.
glean little stuff because I'm so late to the game. I'm trying to just get caught up. And I think it may
Oh,
have
yeah.
been at like beach brawl and Jason Grubb was there and he came on and did a little blurb and I looked into it more and I kind of put it in the back of my head for a couple more months. And then as that other programming just wasn't working, I was like, okay, we'll give this a shot because I need to do something differently because I will work myself to death. I mean, I'll hurt myself, I'll run myself to the ground unless somebody says, hey, dial it back on this day. Hey, we're taking a week to bring it back. I started Boulder this summer, probably like the very beginning of the summer. And I've been really, really happy with it and the results.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm very glad to hear you say that. I know we're, as a team, we love the feedback and hearing when people are having a good experience. What are some of the things that stood out? Like I mean, Jason is a kind of the force that draws a lot of people into Boulder. And so we're
Mhm.
incredibly grateful for all his accolades and just who he is as a human because he's great marketing material in addition to just being a good dude. But like once you got into Boulder, then what were the things that stood out to you and that kind of had the most appeal and feel like are sticky and keeping you around?
Like, I need somebody to tell me to deload. I need to tell somebody to tell me, "Don't go hard on this day,"
Oh
because
yeah.
I will tear myself up if somebody isn't holding me accountable. And the normal programming, for just average people doesn't necessarily do that the way that I need it. For me, the Circle app was huge, like, especially because I train by myself. I have very few CrossFit people in my life. So having that just to like even hear other people's questions, be like, oh, there's somebody else that has that question too. And to feel like there's people in my corner is a super cool thing. And the accessibility of Jason is ridiculous. I mean, being able to have him comment and like just be there to help and how genuinely he wants to help and be in all the athletes' life is really important and was a cool thing for me.
Yeah, I've mentioned this before in a previous podcast. It's been a little while, but when I first joined Boulder, the Circle app to me, I was a little, why? Why do we have this? And
Mhm.
because in my previous programming that I was following, the community was kind of baked into the leaderboard. And so I was drawn to the leaderboard and was super driven to be competitive there. And then there's a bunch of banter that goes on. You kind of build some connections there, but it wasn't really robust dialogue. It was fist bumps and good jobs and pats on the back,
Mhm.
and that was kind of it. And so then when I got exposed to Circle, I was like, well, it's not in the app. It's a totally different experience. It was just a bit of a new concept. Now I'm all for community, but I didn't know if it was going to work having them separated leaderboard and community. Come to find out, it's great. Like Circle is really not only the experience within it is really, really good. There's a lot of capabilities there, but the community of Boulder is just spectacular. And there's
Yeah.
so much support that can be found there. And, not everybody needs it. Not everybody thinks they need it right out of the gate, but I don't know many people who say they don't appreciate it once they discover it. And it is just it's such a unifying thing, community, and it's such a sticky thing that once you find yourself surrounded by good people, that's when you truly understand the value of it. And
Mhm.
I'm just grateful when people, when they find it. But these podcasts, like doing what we're doing, this started as just hey, Jason, have you thought about what this might look like? And he obviously has his podcast, but I was so inspired by the people that I knew in the Boulder athlete community and was like, man, I want to hear more about their story. What
Mhm.
if? What if we did this thing? And we just
Yeah.
had people come on and share their story. I think that'd be really cool. And this is I think you're our 32nd podcast, Andy. So thanks
Mhm.
again for that. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is so cool. I love hearing about people's story. And let me just say thank you, a huge thank you again for sharing yours. And I hope we can stay in touch. And I hope that people find inspiration in your story and reach out to you to hear more and get questions from you. And as I have no doubt that they will. Your passion is in coaching, is in swimming. And right now you're teaching. I think you're teaching high school, right?
Mhm.
Yeah. So tell me
Yes.
about like kind of what your aspirations are. And
Yes. So I started coaching high school and then decided I wanted to switch over. I was coaching swim in high school and I decided I wanted to switch over to teaching high school too, just because teaching pays the bills and it's on my kids' schedule and I have insurance and so it works for right now. But my heart is to be able to do all the fitness things and to be able to help people get better at swimming, improve swim technique, endurance, all of that. And as I've gotten to CrossFit, I've seen that that's a skill a lot of people need help with. So that's kind of been on my heart is to start a program where I could help people do that or something along that lines. I haven't really thought too much into it, but that's the direction I'd like to go.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Man, we just had Legends in December and there was a swim event. That's the first time I've ever
Mhm.
done a competitive swim event. I actually I swam, not competitively, but I just took a number of swim courses in college just to help my fitness. And thankfully that came through and I did okay in that event, but like by no means am I a really efficient swimmer. Now, having watched a lot of other CrossFitters in the water, it's clear a lot of people are not spending a whole lot of time in the
Yeah.
pool. So the need for some coaching and some hot tips from people that are experienced and have had success in the water, I mean, would be great. So there's a space for it. The question is like, can you turn that passion into something that's helping pay the bills? I don't know. I don't have an answer for you, but gosh, it's got to be out there. You just got to find the right set of circumstances. You had mentioned also you don't say this out loud, so I'm not going to say it out loud for you, but like one day, who knows what could happen? If you continue this journey of CrossFit and what it could turn into and the kind of competitive fitness level that you could achieve. But the thing that is honestly, I think sets you up for success is this foundation of swimming and endurance and the mindset that it requires to be successful in that sport is very similar to the mindset it requires to be successful at anything,
Mhm.
right? There's a whole bunch of adversity. It's challenging. You get humbled and you got to be willing to find a way to stay motivated and grind essentially in a really productive and healthy way. Grind just meaning doing the things you don't want to do. The things that most people would say, it's uncomfortable. I'm going to stop. You're willing to do it because you know what lies on the other side of that discomfort.
Mhm.
Like that's a thing you have to really develop. That is a skill that you have to develop. And you have that for sure. The stubbornness that you have called out in yourself kind of can be a superpower if you can harness it in a great way, you know,
Mhm.
where people would give up. You're not willing to give up. And I think that's a great thing. That can be a curse in some areas of life,
Mhm.
but it can be a blessing if you can harness it in a productive way. I'm thinking about swimmers in the sport or endurance athletes, former endurance athletes who have become really successful CrossFitters. There are many.
Yeah.
And so I think the foundation for you is there in a way that most people don't have. Now it takes a ton of work on top of all of that to build the skills and the capacity and all the things, but it's not like you're coming in with a big disadvantage. I actually think the opposite. I think you're coming in with a pretty good advantage.
Thank you. Yeah, that is just about my only skill I come in with. Because I'm willing to do the work and I'm not gonna give up.
Well, it's a powerful one. It can go a long way. I'm certainly cheering for you. And let me just say thank you again, Andy, for being bold in the circle community. And that means a lot. And let me put this call out and please help me, Andy, put this call out to more of our bolder women that have a story that they want to share that they think somebody can find some inspiration in. Your story is loaded with that. And I think people truly are going to find inspiration in it. So very sincerely, thank you for sharing that and being vulnerable. And I hope we can stay connected, Andy, because I'm definitely interested in to see how your journey continues from here on.
Yes, I would love that. Definitely a big call out to the women. I think especially women that are mamas and going through different hormone stuff and we just have a whole different story and it's so good to hear other women going through the same thing and be able to connect and hear where they're at, what they've been through too, and that we're not in it by ourselves.
That's right. And here's the truth. I think there's as many men that are going to resonate with a story that they just heard from you as there are women. Like there's so much that you shared that, man,
Mhm.
striking chords with me for sure. So thank you again. Let's stay in touch.
I would love that. Thank you so much, Josh.
The fire don't die, it just burns deeper inside. We're masters of the grind, forged by the climb. Raise that bar, let the plates collide. Stronger, wiser, bolder. Tonight we're